What the heck is going on at Real Madrid? It's been a catastrophic 2 weeks for us. If you don't know, I'm a Real Madrid fan. I brought my 2013 CR7 jersey. You can see how dirty it is. You can see the tatters on the number. So you know I live this, bro. And it's been going on for a couple weeks now. I like to call it Madrid's no good, very bad week. 2 years trophyless and capped off with a fight between Tchouméni and Valverdé, a petition for Mbappé to go out. It has 73 million signatures. Mbappe's hurt, misses out El Clasico. He goes to Italy with his girlfriend, and people want him out. They say that Real Madrid is better without him, that Vinicius is captain. And look, I'll get into all of this, but I don't think it's as bad as it seems. Yesterday, the president, Florentino Pérez, he gave a conference, basically called in the journalists, Spanish journalists, and said a bunch of things. One, there's a mole in the dressing room. This is a player that is on his way out and upset. Two, that people want him out of Real Madrid, and there's something going on behind the scenes to get him out. So he's holding elections, but he won't resign. Three, he talked about the fight between Tchouméni and Valverde. And then four, people are saying he's too old, he has cancer, that he's not ready for the job. And he was kind of dispelling all those rumors. Florentino Pérez took over when I was really little, so I didn't really know much about it when it happened because I was so young. But he's been the godfather of all the Real Madrid success over the years. All the Champions Leagues, I think it's been seven Champions Leagues, 7 La Ligas since he's taken over. So a great businessman who really knows a lot about the sport. So I trust him. As a Madrid fan, I trust him. But there's definitely been stuff going on that I'm not happy with. First, the fight. Pérez said, and I think Tchouméni and Valverde both said, that these things happen in football. And that's true. When you're competitive in a physical game, you'll fight with everyone, even your teammates. What can't happen is it goes to punches. And if it doesn't sound like it did, I'd choose to believe them that they say they didn't punch each other. But if it starts to be this, that can't happen. The other thing is, as Pérez said, the mole. You cannot have a mole under any circumstances. You can't have someone spilling locker room secrets to the journalist. So that's the first issue. The fight, it happens. I think both players stay. You find them. It's done. These things happen. It's not a big deal. Obviously, I hope Valverde was okay. He'll be good for World Cup. The season's over for us. No trophies, regardless. The other problem, Mbappé, right? So Mbappé has been the subject of a lot of criticism recently, and I think very unfairly. People are saying that the team is better without him, that it hasn't worked, that he's kind of allergic to Champions League, he doesn't help the team succeed, and that he doesn't care about Real Madrid. Well, the first point, that he doesn't care about Real Madrid. Look, if you've been following Mbappé, you've seen the picture of him with in his room when he was like 12 years old. Ronaldo posters on the entire wall. His dream is to play for Real Madrid and fill that role that Ronaldo did. So do I think he does not care about Real Madrid? No. He might be arrogant, but I think he is a good guy. This idea that he's like this dictator and, moves stuff going on behind the scenes, I don't think is true. He backed Xabi Alonso, who I'll get to in a minute, and he's very tight with Vini Jr., which a lot of people don't think is the case. The petition with 73 million, there are definitely some Madrid fans, but I don't think it's representative of the full Madrid fan base. I think a lot of them are bots. I think a lot of them are opposing fans trying to sow discord. Look, does he get booed at matches? Yes. Did Cristiano Ronaldo get booed at matches? Yes. Does Vini Jr.? Yes. Does Benzema? Has Bale? All of the Real Madrid stars at some point have gotten booed at their own matches because that's just the nature of being a Real Madrid player. The highest standard of any player in the world is demanded of a Real Madrid star. So the petition, I think, is disrespectful, but I don't think it's necessarily all Madrid fans, right? People say he didn't work with Cavani and Neymar. He didn't work with Messi and Neymar. He doesn't work with Vini and Bellingham. So there's 2 points that I would say. A, he was top scorer every single year at PSG, except for the 1 year with Cavani. They won the league every single year except one. They won Coupe de France every single year. They won the domestic cup, 3 out of 5 times. It did work. They just didn't get a Champions League. And that's kind of what's evaded him the whole time. So I don't think it's fair to say that, that he's the problem. He's going for Pichichi 2 years in a row now. What I do have a problem with is his defensive work rate. That needs to get a little bit better, right? I mean, you're the best in the world, so you're given a little bit of leeway, but you still need to press and help the team. Are we better without him? No. I mean, we saw that in the El Clasico, 2-0 loss. We had nothing in attack. The second thing is that it works with France. It works with France with Giroud and Griezmann. It works with France with Dembele and Colomboani, with Ekitike and Dembele, with Olise. It works with all these players, and somehow Mbappe is the problem. No, I don't think so. The third problem, we've had 3 managers in the past, I think 2 years now, or a year now. Ancelotti from 2021 to 25. He was kind of seen out at the end of 2025 because he went trophyless. Then you get Xabi Alonso next. 2025, then he gets sacked in 2026. And now we have Alvaro Arbeloa. Followed by Jose Mourinho, likely to be the next one. My first point is this. I think the sacking of Ancelotti was a little premature. So he wins the Champions League in 2023-24. That's basically Bellingham's team with Vinicius' team with Bellingham, Kroos, and Modric, those big stars. These are some of the statistics of the 2023 season. Then they get Mbappe in 2024, and this is what happens. So, your winning percentage is down, your losing percentage is up, you're scoring less, and you're conceding more. However, you can see it's a very small sample size. It's 15 games. So I think it's unfair to judge Ancelotti based off of, this was taken very early, but Ancelotti goes trophyless his first year with Mbappe. I think if I was in the front office, I'd give him a little bit more time there, because you bring in a star player like Mbappe, changes the system completely. You don't know exactly how you're playing. A transfer in June, so there's no time to integrate with the squad, or very little time for them to develop their way of play. They have to change it suddenly like that. So, and you could see Ancelotti, he's a legendary coach for Real Madrid. He's the third most in points per game. He's the most winning coach in terms of trophies. He's won, this says 11. This was just while he was here in 2020 for the 4 years between 21 and 25. He won 4 more when he was coaching earlier in the 2010s. I think sacking Ancelotti was a bad move. I think you give him 1 more year. The second thing I think was not the greatest signing was Xabi Alonso. And I think Xabi Alonso is an excellent coach. He's a football legend. He knows much more than I do, and much more than a lot of people about the sport and tactics. And you can see he had a decent win percentage. He won by percentage more games than Ancelotti. Again, small sample size. But the problem is he failed to do well in the big games. We got knocked out round of 16 Copa del Rey. We lost to City in the Champions League. We lost to Liverpool in the Champions League. We lost to Barcelona in the final of the Supercopa, and we lost El Clasico. Which leads me to my next point, which is that Xabi Alonso, despite coming from Real Madrid, his coaching style does not align with the philosophy of Florentino Pérez, which is Galacticos. Most people know this, but if you don't, Florentino Pérez's idea of football management is you run it like a profitable business, and you bring in, with the profit that you make, you bring in the best, most marketable, highest brand, world-class players, and a coach who can manage them, and you let them play their football. And despite Xabi Alonso being, I would say, a Galactico, he doesn't coach under that philosophy. Xabi Alonso came from Bayer Leverkusen in the German Bundesliga, and he was extremely successful in 2024. He didn't lose a single game in the league. He made it to the Europa League final where they lost to Atalanta, and that was the only game they lost all year. But his system was very tactically disciplined, right? It was extremely fluid and free-flowing, but everyone had their role and played a very specific role. This is what I call the difference between coaches, right? You have your tacticians, which is guys that are they're typically quieter. Bielsa's not, but typically quieter. And it doesn't fit the mold every time. They're more concerned with tactical discipline and, how the players fit their system, right? How can you coach players to fit the system that I want to play? And it oftentimes works very well. It worked for Xabi Alonso at Bayer Leverkusen. It's currently working for Arteta, but I do think that he's kind of evolved a little bit. It worked for Pep at Barcelona. It worked for Pep again at Bayern Munich. Again, I do think Pep has evolved into a more of a manager, but that's the way it works. I mean, Bielsa is one of the most legendary tacticians of all time. Cruyff is another one. Xavi is another one. These guys are very successful, and you can be very successful. However, the Real Madrid philosophy does not align with that. The Real Madrid philosophy aligns more with a manager who tweaks the system to get the best out of his players rather than managing his players to fit the system. So the most famous one, Carlo Ancelotti. And if you see Ancelotti recently, he talked very well about the players at Real Madrid, how they were, professional, good players, basically defending them, right? Ancelotti for me is a top 3 manager of all time. Jose Mourinho is as well. And Jose Mourinho, while he's known very much for his defensive, dependability and discipline, he knows how to adjust the system to get the best out of players. I mean, he did it with Ronaldo at Real Madrid. They won, and he scored 70 goals in 1 year. Zidane as well, playing with a fluid front three of Ronaldo, Bale, and Benzema. Sir Alex as well. And all these managers have experience, ironically, with Cristiano Ronaldo, because that's just kind of the philosophy. You get a player that's so good and so intelligent and so technical that they can kind of play anywhere. I would say more recently, Pep. I think he's a good blend of that tactical discipline, but he also knows how to manage the players on the field, right? City famously went from very not rigid in terms of their play, but tactically disciplined, very innovative style with De Bruyne, Aguero, Sané, and Sterling. They get Haaland, and now it's different. You see Cherki popping up in different spots on the pitch. Nico O'Reilly's getting in there. It's much more free moving, and there's a big difference between fluid and free moving, because fluid, I would say, is just how well do you move the ball, but the difference is for example, Arteta's philosophy is, you could say, is similar to early stage Pep, and this actually gives me a great idea for a video. But you mainly see the same attackers in the same places, right? Then that's what we mean by tactical discipline, right? Very consistent tactics. So you bring in a manager that doesn't really fit the philosophy of your front office, wins the matches he's supposed to win, loses the matches that you really want him to win in El Clasico, Champions League, and all that, and he kind of loses the dressing room. So you saw Vinny Jr. beefing with him because he took him off in the 75th minute of El Clasico. Now, again, a lot of people have bad stuff to say about Vinny. I really like him. I think, and you can see, right, the opponent likes him too. If you look here, I mean, this is a Albacete player who asked for his shirt, and in the game they were, going head to head, fighting very much. And Vinny's arguing with the ref after the game, but he still has time to give him the shirt. I think he's a great guy off the pitch. And I think he just wears his emotions on the sleeve on the pitch. He beefs with Xabi Alonso. He complains that he's getting taken off. And you see Xabi Alonso kind of losing the dressing room. And again, the thing is, when you have a manager who's more experienced with managing the player rather than the system, who favors managing the player over the system, they know how to deal with that. Xabi Alonso probably hasn't had to deal as much with that as an Ancelotti or a Zidane, because he's playing at Bayer Leverkusen. I mean, his recent coaches was at Sociedad and Bayer Leverkusen, neither one of which has players of the caliber and, stardom and profile of Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe. So I think it's the wrong choice to bring in Xabi Alonso. Arbeloa, it's tough for him because he has the worst win percentage. We're losing games, but he's a transition manager. You can't really bring him in the middle of the season and ask him to win too many games. I do like the idea of bringing in Jose Mourinho. He has experience dealing with high-profile players. He can adjust the system the way he wants, and he's got the winning caliber. So I think that's a solution. The problem, I would say, is not with necessarily as much on the players as people say it is. It's also not on the manager as much as people say it is. The real problem, this is what I'm getting to: injuries and signings. So 24, Toni Kroos leaves. You see a drop in results, as you could tell with Ancelotti. 25, Modric leaves. These are two legends of the game, two of the best midfielders of all time. But most importantly, and this is funny because people say Mbappé is the dictator, right? I say here's your definition of a dictator: a person who can dictate play. So can you pick the ball up and move the opponent without too much help from the system? These two are perfect examples of that. And because they leave, we find less success, and we find Mbappe and Vini checking in more, which is a lot of people's problem with them, to get the ball. I'll show you a perfect example. All right, a perfect example here. This is 24 Champions League campaign against Bayern Munich. Toni Kroos gets the ball on the left. He's got Harry Kane, and I believe that's Musiala pressing him. No, Sane. So he gets the ball back, and if you look at Bayern's shape, there's no real threat here. The midfielders are shielding the back line. Vinicius is 1v1, which you could argue in the current system, he would check in here, try to get the ball, dribble at this man, and maybe lose it, maybe combine with Mbappe. But it's not as consistent. However, since you have Toni Kroos, who's a dictator, a midfielder who can dictate play, this is what happens. He gets the ball, no threat. He tells Vini to check in, and he breaks two lines with one pass. In on goal, Vinicius can just run in and finish. That is what the Real Madrid team is missing. Modric used to be able to do it, or Modric did it for us, and Kroos did it for us. We have no player in the midfield because we have midfielders like Tchouméni and Valverdé, who are great players in themselves, but cannot, I would say, dictate play like Kroos and Modric. The second, or I guess the third problem is injuries. We've had 120 injuries since Ancelotti was since we stopped winning, which includes Rodrigo, torn ACL, Militao, torn ACL, Vinicius hamstring, Mbappe knee, Bellingham shoulder, Thibaut Courtois ACL. These are star players who are getting hurt allegedly because of the playing surface. If you don't know, we renovated our stadium in 2023 and bring out a rollout grass, but the rollout grass is very, very compact. Your knee can just get blown out, and that happens all the time. I don't know how to fix that. Maybe look at the physios, maybe look at the doctor, switch the training surface, something to fix the injuries. We need to look at injuries. It's a harsh reality because there's no one to blame, but injuries are a huge part of football. We've had as much injuries as Barcelona and Atletico Madrid combined. So you can't really ask too much when you're getting double the injuries of your rivals, especially to your star players. The solution. For me, Jose Mourinho is a good start. You bring in Jose Mourinho. He knows how to manage Mbappe, Vini to get the best out of them and fixes some of our defensive issues. I think he has the respect of the dressing room as a coach who is very successful and has a big personality. That's step one. Step two, fix the playing surface, find a physio that will keep our players healthy. Step three, signings, right? So what we're missing right now is this. Right? Dictators in the midfield, and I would say a striker, right? An out-and-out ball winner in the air. So priority one is that midfielder. I would say Vitinha can play that role. I don't know if he wants to leave Pérez, but Vitinha certainly can play that role, and Nico Paz can play that role. Nico Paz, I'd like to see a little bit more, but I think he could play. He's a player who can dictate play. Now, up top, I think we're better than people think with Mbappe and Vinicius. I do think they can combine. Mbappe, I know, can combine because you can see it with France. And Ekitike, who's, other than his aerial ability, is a similar player to Vinicius in his speed, dribbling ability, finishing ability. So I know they can combine. I'm not worried about Vini and Mbappe getting each other's way. However, we don't really have too much of an aerial target. And we don't really have someone who can kind of play on the right or intelligent enough to play in this fluid front three like France has. So I would bring in Thuram, who has proven he can play with Mbappe at France. Good in the air, very good technically, fast, can finish. Thuram, or I bring in Osimhen. Osimhen's a little more raw, but they both press high. They both are high energy attackers that can win it in the air, stretch the line. I think those two signings would be good. So that's what, I think it's not as bad as you think. We're on the right track. I don't think Pérez should go out. I like Mourinho, the signing of Mourinho, but you need to sign players. The lack of support for Mbappe and Vinicius is creative support, at least, is the main problem. So I think once you figure that out, that is when we will succeed. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing some more stuff like this. These like chalkboard style videos. This little section here gave me a great idea for a video. So going to be talking about some managers and their tactical profile, talk about Arsenal. So just keep your eyes open for the next one. Thanks for tuning in.